Moving forward of quarterback rankings this week, a little bit of movement, some of the most dynamic play of the XFL with the uh, quarterback play in week 3. Saw a couple guys go over 300 yards, throw multiple touchdowns. Overall, it was a great week to be a fan of the XFL and a fan of quarterback play in general. Guys, if you're not subscribed, be sure you do. Drop a comment. If I got anything right, if I got anything wrong, let me know. Big news. This is coming out a little bit later on a Wednesday. Tomorrow, I'm doing an interview with a USFL player. As you know, I do my interviews in person. We're also hoping that it's going to be I don't want to say broadcasted, but put on the actual screen. So you'll be able to watch me, my ugly face and his good looking face. So you should watch that. It's going to be a good little excerpt for you guys. Get to know me better, get to know this player better. Without further ado, let's get into these quarterback rankings, and then we'll talk a little bit more about some other XFL stuff later. So, coming in, honorable mention, Cole McDonald. He's the only honorable mention this week. So, he was one of 10 quarterbacks that played. McDonald didn't really do much, but he continues to open up that rushing attack for Max Borghi, and right now, Bryce Aline pretty much keeping him in there, kind of being a decoy. He only had 7 rushes for 5 yards. He did complete his first career XFL pass. Remember, McDonald does have experience in the CFL, so he does have some stats from there. But he was 1-1 for 3 yards. His biggest thing is the team's got to keep accountability of him. So even if he's not actually handing the ball off on those read option plays, he is accounting for that defender and not freeing him up. So if obviously the defensive end or linebacker, whoever's got that edge, is crashing down, McDonald just tucks it and runs. But overall, another solid performance from him in the limited role that he has. I mean, it's great that he's out there, 2020 7th round pick, getting an opportunity to finally showcase his skill set. Coming in at number 9, Derek King. Usually he's been in our honorable mention. He hasn't really thrown many passes. This week, he threw 3 passing attempts, 3 completions, 14 yards, 1 touchdown, and then 2 rushing attempts for 9 rushing yards. I mean, King threw an absolute dot to Chris Blair. It was great to see him, kind of moving around. His other 2 completions, he looked a lot very erratic. Didn't really know the pass previous he threw. Almost got broken up by his own his own receiver, dumped it off to Raquel Armstead, I believe, for like 4 yards. Overall, King in the running attack did not look very comfortable. I think he had, as the quarter was dying down, it was like a 3rd and 20 something, and he kind of looked really uncomfortable. They were real backed up, some penalties and whatnot. But I mean, King came in, did what he was asked to do, was able to actually throw the football, look good on 2 of those passes. Like I said, that last one was kind of a broken down play. It was good to see him go through progressions. They didn't really bring the house on him rushing wise, so they kind of dropped a lot of people back and had a couple spies on him on the pass previous to the touchdown. But I mean, his touchdown pass was a nice ball to Chris Blair in the back of the end zone. It's good to see him, getting a little bit more involved, even though Teamu, I think, had like 80% of the snaps at quarterback. Um, as we've been seeing with these 2 quarterback trends, it's not always the most advantageous thing, but the defenders are 3-0. Reggie Barlow seems like a great leader of men, able to get this team pushing forward, even though they obviously do look beatable. But they're 3-0 going into week 4, and then if obviously the Battlehawks win versus the Renegades, that week 5 game in St. Louis should be pretty dynamic. Coming in at number 8, he's our biggest follower this week, going to be Jack Cohn of the San Antonio Brahmas. Looked great on that first drive. It was a short field, good kick return by the Brahmas, and then after that, we saw really Wade Phillips feast on this rookie quarterback. I mean, he went 8 of 20, 64 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick, 9 rushing attempts, 27 rushing yards. Cone just looked overmatched by Wade Phillips' defense. The Roughnecks are clearly the best team in the league right now, based off the first 3 weeks on offense and defense. he's got a bunch of injuries on the offensive line. Kind of seemed like the Houston kind of put the brakes on the offense, so it made that score a little bit closer than it really was. I don't think Cohn's in danger of being benched yet. I still think he's done enough good things for them to keep moving forward. I mean, I told everyone, okay, I did have to rank him higher based off the other quarterbacks in week 2, but because of them playing the Guardians, and even the Guardians defense looked a lot better this week. We're not really sure who Cohn is, but granted, this is his third professional football game in the regular season. I think he's got at least till week 5. If they're 2-3 going into week 6, and he's continually not progressing, I could see a swap to Reed Sinnett. Um, but Sinnett seems pretty comfortable where he's at. Obviously, the guy wants to play, but he's got a lot more experience. I thought he was going to be the starter going in. Doesn't seem like Cohn's a cancer at all. Obviously the team voted him as an offensive captain, but they also did cut their defensive captain, Joel DeBlanco, if I'm saying that right, who after week 1 as well. I mean, injuries kind of jack things up as they have with the Brahmas offensive line. He's on this like third and fourth offensive tackles. So moving forward, I don't know if Cohn rebounds going into week 4, but I don't think you give up on him yet. But that 8 of 20 is unacceptable. Any of these guys putting under 50% in their completion percentage is absolutely disgusting to me, and I would rather them take these shorter dump offs than actually do what they're doing and trying to air it out and throwing errant picks and whatnot. Number 7, a little bit of a conservative ranking for Hundley. He went 13 of 28, 224 passing yards, some big throws down the field, 2 touchdowns, 8 rushing attempts, adding for 66 yards and a rushing touchdown. I mean, Hundley could take a big jump next week. I just need to see more. This is his first game that he played the whole game. Last week he was splitting reps with Luis Perez, the Spring King, or the former Spring King, and we'll talk about that later. Hundley was looking comfortable. He was plagued by about 3 drops. They're 0-3 right now. I think it's his job for the rest of the season, unless they go to 0-8, which I don't see them doing. But if they drop to like 0-7, 0-8, I believe that even Jalen McClendon might get snaps over Perez. I love Luis Perez. Anyone who watches these leagues loves Luis Perez. Um, if you don't, then what are you doing here? But ultimately, Hundley is still learning the system. He's got another week under his belt. He could take a big jump forward, another week of getting those QB1 snaps. But I think it might be a little bit unfair to him because he's going to have to do a little bit more to keep them in the playoff hunt. Ultimately, that completion percentage has to go up. I think they had like 4 drops or something like that, but Hundley also had about 4 bad throws. I'm not really sure what is going on with Rod Woodson's team. I didn't think they'd be the best team in the league, but I didn't think they'd be 0-3. 10-game season, obviously. I'm chalking this up to just Hundley getting more familiar. There seemed to be a couple passes where him and the receiver were off. Um, He missed Max Sexton on one that I thought he should have had, but ultimately, statistically, as far as from a yards percentage or perspective, they are moving the ball. They do have a pretty good rushing attack with Rod Smith and DeAndre Torrey and John Levitt. He had a beautiful pass to John Levitt for about 50 yards and a score. So look for Hundley to at least another statistically have another good game. Hopefully, he increases his completion percentage, but I mean, they were right in this game, and usually the last couple of weeks when Ben DiNucci's been asked to put the team on his back, there's been a turnover or something. This week, DiNucci stepped up. We're having a different conversation about Hundley. Obviously, if they win and they're 1-2, especially in his first game as a starter in the XFL, his first game starting since like I believe 2017 when he was with the Packers. But I mean, Hundley's doing some good things. He'll continue. The more comfort he gets, I'm hoping a better result. They got the defenders. It'd be real awesome if they they can put a win against the defenders and the Battlehawks win, tie up the Northern Division, and really allow the Battlehawks to take a step forward in the division if they beat the Renegades in week 4, and then having the defenders come in week 5. Moving up to number 6, we got Kyle Sloter making his debut. I mean, it was a pretty conservative game for him. He obviously was the backup the first 2 weeks of Drew Plitt. Reed Johnson of the Marcast talked about this, that Bob Stoops was very vocal in the fact that Sloter gave them that spark. Well, I don't know what type of spark you're getting with 10 points, but in the end, Sloter was my number 2 quarterback coming into the season. Obviously, Plitt kind of took a lot of those reps away from him. He went 18 of 23 to 124 passing yards, 1 touchdown, 4 rushing attempts, -2 yards. Something I was thinking about, and I talked about briefly in my preview video of the Renegades taking on the Guardians, was we hype on Slother's preseason games. Now I'm starting to wonder, and I'm not going to go look back at the film because man, that's a lot of film to look at. Was this more indicative of Slother coming in fresh with fresh receivers, with the number 3s and 4s going against the number 2s and 3s of another team who were on the field already for 15, 20 snaps, and that he had fresher guys? I don't know. I mean, Souther did a better job of taking the check down and not forcing as many throws. Um, it was essentially a game manager game. He threw his 10th career all football touchdown, which is pretty cool. He's coming up on 2,000 career all football yards. He's going to be about one of 7 quarterbacks in post 2000 history to throw for over 2,000 yards in their all football career. And that consists of XFL, UFL, FXFL, Spring League 2021, and the AAF, XFL 2.0, and the USFL. So I think that's a little cool tidbit. But one one of the best things he did was not turn the ball over and use his security blanket in Vaughn's. Caleb Van Der Esch, he threw some nice balls to him, who was with the Battlehawks in camp, and is also Leighton Van Der Esch's cousin, I believe. And then always using Sal Cannella. Cannella had 5 receptions for 33 yards. Maybe with another week under his belt, we might see an improvement from Souther. I'm glad he's healthy. I'm glad he's playing. I definitely think he's more accomplished than Drew Plitt, but Matty Fresh dropped this, and I thought it was kind of funny. Was the Renegades are going to look up and be 7-3, and they're going to kind of grift their way through the playoffs to the playoffs. I mean, it's entirely possible. The Southern Division is not sexy by any means, so we could see a 7-3 Arlington team get blown out in the championship, and that the Northern Division game, which I think is going to be the Defenders and the Battlehawks, be the real championship. But we'll never know. Sloter's got a lot of experience. Started 9 games last year. This is his 10th game he started, in addition to 13 or 14 preseason games. So the guy's got a lot of experience under his belt. But once again, like I brought up, not really sure how valuable that experience in the preseason is moving forward. Number 5, moving up from the 6th position last week, was Paxton Lynch. Paxton suffered from a couple drops, man. He had actually more bad throws. I graded him, overthrown balls, all that stuff. But I mean, he went 19 of 31, 219 passing yards, 10 rushing attempts, 43 rushing yards, and a dynamic rushing touchdown from 3 yards out on a QB draw. That looked more like a QB power, honestly. But I mean, Lynch continues to improve. That offensive line is extremely volatile. He was able to get rid of the ball quick. It looks like he's going to be their de facto QB1. The QB rotation thing for them was not working. Lynch needs to get comfortable. He had another good first opening drive. That touchdown drive he led looked pretty good. The end of the game, he narrowly misses Charleston Rambo. Another yard inside. That's a catch, and then you got the drop by Lance Lenoir. Lenoir's getting comfortable. He's moved up to the starting position. That's his guy from the Michigan Panthers. Jermaine Martin, Kelvin Taylor, both look like studs. I think Taylor was actually taken off the roster. I have to double check my notes, but I mean, they're 2 fumbles away from easily beating the Renegades last week. Now, they did bring in Quinn Flowers from the Fan Control Football USF guy. He also played in 2020 with the Tampa Bay Vipers. I think you keep riding the horse of Paxton Lynch. You get to that week 7 mark, they're out of the playoff hunt. Then you can maybe spark it up with a change or something like that. Throw Flowers in there. I'm not a big DeAndre Francois guy. I mean, who is at this point? And then Quinton Dormandy, his whole situation is pretty dynamic. But I'm curious to see when the depth chart comes out. Are we going to see Flowers, that QB2? Now, that guy could run a little bit more read option, give Paxton a spell. He's more athletic than Francois. I think he's a better thrower of the football than Francois, but we'll see. I mean, Terrell Buckley definitely was a little bit more conservative regarding his outbursts this week, which is kind of the best part of the game, in my opinion. Moving down to number 4, I got Jordan Teamu, who's coming up from 7. First week going over 50% completion percentage. He had 196 yards, 11 of 20, a touchdown, 10 rushing attempts, 22 rushing yards, touchdown, and then a big fumble at the end of the game, which ended up not hurting them. So I wanted to rank him higher, but my big thing is the majority of his passing yards came on 4 deep throws, and then if he misses all of them, we're looking at a 7 of 20 game with about 100 yards for Teamu. Definitely like that they're giving him more control of the offense. That they are keeping him in the game more. I do like De'Aaron King, but I don't want King throwing the football. I think it gets a little too cute sometimes. They had Eric Dungy as a blocker for them. They've been dressing 3 QBs for the past 2 weeks. But ultimately, Teamu's rushing ability is what's putting him apart in a lot of this too. He's top 10 rusher in the XFL. I think he's at 99 rushing yards. You know, usually in the USFL and the XFL, like I've talked about, he's always been a top 10 rusher. Hopefully that offensive line gets a little bit more healthy. Liam Ryan looked pretty good at center. They did sign Bruno Reagan, like we talked about, but a big injury they have is Ethan Wolf getting injured. He's out the next 2 weeks. Granted, he had a big drop, but they're bringing in Alex Ellis. So a new weapon in the offense. I mean, Chris Blair looked great the whole game. The rushing attack is obviously the strength of this team. But as long as Teamu seems to get a little bit more comfortable, uh, we cut down on these drops, just like every alt football league. But Lucky Jackson was another guy who had 89 yards, 2 big catches, and then he also caught that 2-point conversion. It looks good overall. The defenders, you know, though there's a lot to be desired, and at times I feel like they're playing above their pay grade. They're still 3-0, and Reggie Barlow is doing a great job as a head coach. Coming in at number 3, AJ McCarron of the St. Louis Battlehawks. He's been my number 1 guy the last 2 weeks. Obviously, he had 3 turnovers, one of which wasn't really his fault on that slip. But McCarron's offensive line, you know, created a little bit more pressure than desired. He went 26 of 42, 262 yards, 4 touchdowns, 2 picks, 2 rushing attempts, 6 rushing yards, and that fumble. I mean, we lost points twice because of his turnovers. Obviously, one with the pick 6, and the other with the fumble that was a little bit, I think, inside the 20-yard line, so, or if not, very close to the red zone. You take those points, you flip them around a little bit. The Battlehawks are going 3-0. McCarron's leadership was still pretty good. Still, sometimes it looks like he's coaching a little bit too much. Sometimes it looks like Gradkowski is kind of keeping the chains on him a little bit. You heard it towards the end of the game. Beck was like, "Bruce, we need to open this up," or B, "We need to open this up a little bit." I don't see McCarron dropping lower than 3. His consistency has been great. He's tied for the league in touchdowns, top 3 in passing yards, and he's way more athletic than we probably remember him from his days at Alabama. There was a couple miscommunication we saw, specifically one to Mateo Durant on a 3rd down. Durant turned left, had to reposition his body. McCarron threw it to the outside. The ball was perfect. That pick 6, that's a 9-yard gain if the receiver doesn't slip. But there was obviously a little bit of issues with the offensive line play that kind of forced some throws as well. I counted 3 drops on the receivers, but I also counted 5 bad passes from McCarron. That's going to happen in the game. Not every throw is going to be perfect. I think he's keeping them and playing at a high enough level to keep them competitive. They got Arlington, who just had an anemic offensive performance. This defense is looking good for the Battlehawks. Let's continue to push on. I see McCarron having a bounce back game, going and taking the team to 3-1. Moving down the number. Oh, let me backtrack a little bit. Also, McCarron was very vocal about the issues with the defense, um, or excuse me, with the officials for both teams. I counted 3 penalties that should have been called for the Battlehawks, 2 for the defenders. Hit to the helmet, Teamu's intentional grounding that wasn't called, and then there was 2 blatant holds that they missed with that they missed that they should have called in favor of the defenders. So that's my personal opinion. Beck had to burn that challenge pretty early, but I mean, you can't look at the past. Just keep pushing forward for the Battlehawks. Finally, moving up, Ben DiNucci. He's been at number 4 for the last couple weeks. Um, I mean, the reason why I haven't ranked DiNucci higher is because every time it came down for him to make a play, he had a turnover. Complete opposite this week. Throwing it up to Josh Gordon. Gordon takes it in with about a minute left. DiNucci goes 29 of 37, 377 yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 pick, 6 rushing attempts, 32 yards, 2 fumbles. He's turned the ball over too much, but it's kind of that Bruce Arians, Jameis Winston 2019, risk it for the biscuit type thing. I mean, DiNucci paired up with June Jones. You add in Josh Gordon, Ja'Cour Pearson. This is a dynamic offense. This is looking very similar, except more turnovers to his 2020 offense with the Roughnecks. I mean, DiNucci, this number 1 spot's here for the taking. He puts in another game like this, I'll push him up to number 1. Just got to limit my turnovers a little bit. I think it's going to come down between him and McCarron for the MVP. I love Brandon Silvers, but I feel like there's a lot of help Silvers gets. And granted, Josh Gordon's great and everything like that, but I mean, you're seeing DiNucci scramble a lot more, and they're not really relying on that rushing attack out, like many June Jones teams have done or haven't done in his history as well. His late game mistakes will be the only thing that'll help hold him back. Um, I don't see DiNucci dropping out anymore of the top 3 or 4, especially with it seems like McCarron, Silvers, and DiNucci are going to be the top guys. You might get a guy who pushes up, but now that we're kind of regulating our QB rankings, the movement might be a little less drastic. We were getting our footing the first 2 weeks, but I like DiNucci at number 2 right now. Now coming in at number 1, obviously Brandon Silvers. McCarron's turnovers kind of had to bump him back a bit, uh, just slightly, but overall, Silvers put together another great performance. 24 of 35, 278 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, a pick, and then the kneel down for his only rushing attempt. Said in the article, I'll say it in person. Silvers is now the spring king. He's coming up on all of Perez's stats outside of passing yards. I think he's got right now 26 or 25 passing touchdowns over the AAF, Spring League, and XFLs. I mean, this guy's doing everything AJ Smith's asked. Deontay Burnett, Kirkland, Max Borghi, Garrett Owens, Ben Putnam, Nick Hawley. Take one away. Who are you going to cover? Cedric Byrd. It seems like every week one of these guys is getting open. There's not much more they can do. I mean, AJ Smith knows what he's doing. You can hear him on the play calls. The amount of communication and just trusting him that we see. Silvers is taking full advantage of this. Maybe you can call him a system quarterback. I don't know, but it just seems that it's coupled with the Houston defense setting these boys up for success, and Silvers just kind of being the QB general, managing this game, and then finding whatever weapon is at his disposal. It doesn't get much better than this for Houston. Easily the best team in the Southern Division, looking like they're going to just steamway their way to that title and then to the championship game, where they'll probably take on the Battlehawks or the Defenders. There's nothing more I could say about Silvers that hasn't already been said. The kid can ball. He's doing a great job. And I think AJ Smith has a big part of that. And it doesn't hurt either that Cole McDonald comes in, spells him a play or two, allows him to move a little bit, and creates that opening in the rushing attack. So those are my QB rankings this week. A little bit of change. I'm I'm pretty pumped about where we're going with this. Guys, thank you so much. Like I said, I have a good interview coming up tomorrow with a tight end in the USFL, a local-ish guy. You guys got any questions for me? If I got anything wrong, let me know. But I appreciate you guys tuning in. Make sure you guys like, share, subscribe, and I look forward to hearing your guys' opinions moving forward. Thank you guys. Have a great night.